Thank you very much. Thank you all, and thank you, Jyoti. I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a big fan of Jyoti because you are such a light yourself, and I'm just so happy that you have come out here to Boulder Valley and are working with this community here. Get my technology going. Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me and saying, yes, I am, this workshop that I'm bringing this afternoon is, you all are the first ones to receive it. I actually came to Reverend Jyoti and said, I want to bring this to many of our centers, and I want to start right here locally. You all are actually the closest centers for spiritual living to where I live. I actually live in South Boulder now, so I am in your backyard.
You could be in a seat.
Yes, yes, yes. I plan to be in a seat, yes. Oh, wow. So good to be here. And gosh, what a great topic we have today. The topic is seeming opposites. So seeming, S-E-A-M, and then seeming, S-E-E-M. So seeming opposites. How do we bring together what appears to be opposites? Because so often in our world we're creating opposites, we're creating others. And I'm so glad that Reverend Jyoti was acknowledging the events in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend because it's a real example of where we sometimes can create an other. And then we can fall into the trap that those who created an other created, because then we can make them an other. And now we just have another other, right? It's like, oh, but these folks, they really are an other because of this and this and this. But where does it stop if we keep going in that direction? If we keep creating an other, oh, but you don't know, and we all, well, I shouldn't say all of us, because there could be some people who have totally transcended this condition. But most of us have someone or someones in our lives that is that other, that person that, oh, you don't understand this person. I've tried to talk to them, I've tried to reason, I've tried this. And they're this other. And what I want to say is that we don't have to condone any particular behavior like racism or sexism or any of those things, but we can still love the person, because if not, we're simply creating more otherness and separation, and that is not the healing of our world. That is not the healing and the transformation that our world longs for. The world longs for some group of people who really practice unconditional love. I remember years ago, someone said something that made me really laugh. They said, someone asked, does Jesus' message of unconditional love, is that really true? Does it really work? And they say, well, no one knows because no one's ever tried it. You have tried it, I'm sure. And we are trying it. We are working it. We are working that message in places like this, in Centers for Spiritual Living. We are working that message of unconditional love. I remember for me, several years before coming into Science of Mind, I remember a very specific other. Her name was Deirdre. And Deirdre's, and the story, we make up a story. Once we create the other, we need the story to back it up, and the story keeps getting better. The more ammunition, or more information, the more experience we have with the person, we can build the story even better. So my story was that Deirdre's purpose in life was to make my life miserable. We were on a board together, and I tell you, every meeting I said, oh, how am I going to deal with Deirdre today? And what's she going to throw my direction today? And this woman is tough as nails. She's the toughest woman I've ever met. And she's just going to throw all kinds of things my way. And I was prepared for this meeting. And so we create these others, and they, people who appear to be separate from us, appear to be so different from us. But in our teaching, the core principle in our teaching is oneness. Is oneness. I wrote a little phrase that I posted on Facebook one time that said people are studying all kinds of complex philosophies and all kinds of things. And I said, I'm still trying to get that I am one with all of life. Like, I'm still trying to get that powerful, simple truth. Like, what if we just got that? Like, what does it mean to be one with all of life, where we don't create any separation? We don't create an other. I was thinking of that game Jenga, where, you know, the game Jenga, where it's all these building blocks, and you have to keep on sliding one block out without having the whole thing tumble, which eventually it does, and then that's the person that ends up losing the game, the person that pulls that out. But really, that is how connected we all are. You can't really pull out but so many blocks without it all falling, because we're that connected. We're that together. In the Bible, in Matthew, there's a moment where Jesus is talking with his disciples, and one of his disciples says, "Oh, Jesus, your mother's here and your brothers are here, and they want to talk to you." And he said, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" In other words, he had transcended. He wasn't being cold, like disrespecting his family, but he had transcended that sense of otherness. Like, these are my people and these are the others. Like we do, right? Like we're part of Boulder, or we're part of Lafayette, or we're part of Colorado, or we're part of the United States, and not to speak against being proud and feeling responsible for the place we live. Of course, where we live, of course we have more responsibility for Boulder or Lafayette or Superior or Louisville or wherever it is that we live. Of course, we have a responsibility to that place, and of course, it's great to feel good about where we are. It only becomes harmful when we start to create an other, like it's us against this other. Once we have an other, there starts to become the notion of win-lose. Like, there's an other, so this other might try to get what's mine. And so we set up a win-lose paradigm, where someone has to win and someone has to lose. Our two major political parties in the United States are like that, right? Like who are we lining up with? And then there's like other parties that come about. And the challenge with the other parties that come about is that they say, now we have all the answers, right? So it just becomes another party that says, we have all the answers and everyone else is wrong. And what if instead a party came along? I want a party that comes along and says, we only have some of the answer. We don't have all the answers. We're just a piece of the puzzle. We want to work with all these other parties because they also have a piece of the puzzle. They have a piece of the answer to the puzzle. With me, with Deidre, my nemesis on this board, right? Win-lose. It starts to be win-lose. Is Deidre going to win at this meeting, or am I going to win? Because I know she's going to be going up against me, and she's tough as nails, so I better really be ready when I go into this meeting. One of our title, Seeming Opposites, comes from a Science of Mind core principle that says spirit is an infinite wholeness that embraces all seeming opposites. That embraces all seeming opposites. I love this book called Conscious Loving by Gay and Katie Hendricks. And they are a couple, they are therapists, and they work with people on relationships and starting with their own relationship. And one of the things that they said is that they talk about codependence versus, and I never get it right, I never get the word right that they use that's the healthy version, but it's the opposite of codependence. And they say that codependence is a battle between two people to establish who is the bigger victim. That's what codependence is. And a lot of our relationships are more in the codependent arena. I know, it gets really quiet on that one, right? I recognize myself in it so much when I was reading this about how I've been at times in relationships where there's this codependence, right? There's like, you have an argument and it's like, no, I'm the bigger victim. No, you're the bigger victim. No, I'm the bigger victim, right? Which is we're trying to argue that we've been done wrong. And the other person's trying to argue, no, I've been done wrong. But in this embracing of seeming opposites, we get to step above all that to this place where we see ourselves as whole and where we see the other as whole, not the other as outside of ourselves, but the other person as whole. Can we step into this larger sense of ourselves where we don't see an other? Where we have compassion because we see that everything you could possibly feel, everything you could possibly experience, I could possibly experience and have experienced on some level. People often wonder how I could have compassion for certain people that seem to have harmed me or done this or done that. Or how could I have compassion for those that are espousing the racist beliefs in Charlottesville? Like, how could I have compassion for that group of people? Because I don't choose to create an other. Because everything that they're feeling, which is fear, which is I'm going to be left out, which is I'm going to lose if someone else wins. It's a win-lose paradigm. I've been in win-lose paradigms. Where does my compassion come from? I understand. I don't condone the behavior. I don't condone the beliefs. But I understand the humanity. And we are all called into this deeper sense of compassion. My own minister, my first minister when I came into Science of Mind, Reverend Eloise, and I can use her name because we've both told the story publicly many times. I was the president of her board. It's a very large spiritual community. And when I would, and some of this is the story I was making up, by the way, that you're going to hear here. So when I would go to talk to Reverend Eloise, I would have something really important to talk to her about. And I would go and say, I need to talk to you. And she would walk away. And boy, the story just kept getting bigger and bigger. The story was, she doesn't like me. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't think my opinions are valid because every time I go to talk to her, she gets up and she walks away. And I have really important things to talk to her about. And she just gets up and walks away every time. And the story just got bigger and bigger and bigger till finally one day, because she was my minister, so I was trying to be very respectful and very kind and thoughtful, and so I never really said anything. Until finally one day it blew up and I said, Reverend E, I am tired of this. We called her Reverend E. I said, I am tired of this. Every time I need to talk to you, you get up and walk away, and I have important things to talk to you about. And she said, wow, that's what you think. She said, I grew up in the country. And in the country where I grew up, when someone said they needed to talk to you, you got up and you started walking and you walked together and had this conversation. She said, I was really confused by your behavior. She said to me, I was really confused by your behavior because you would come up to me and say, you need to talk to me, and then I'd start walking and then you wouldn't come with me. But we can create these stories of an other, right? My story of Deidre. She's mean, she's tough, she's just out to get me, and she's so different, and she's so contrary to everything I believe and think. Our biases can blind us. Our way of thinking can really blind us. And I had a experience recently where I did this experiment with myself because I have tended to be, as many people in this area are, I've tended to be on the liberal end of the political spectrum. I'll confess that I have tended to be on the liberal end of the political spectrum. So I decided to do an experiment, and in addition to, usually I'll read like NBC News Online, right, which in my mind was very objective news, very objective, a little bit of bias, but very objective, basically, news. And so I decided I was going to read Fox News alongside every day. I would read Fox News as well, right? So I read Fox News, and oh my goodness, this is so biased. This is tremendously biased. It's so biased. Oh my goodness, how could I was outraged, right? This is so biased. But I decided to continue the experiment anyway, even though it was almost offensive to me and it was so biased. But the longer and longer I read NBC side by side with Fox News, the more I got to see that the news I was reading, NBC News, was just as biased, only it was biased in the direction of my beliefs. So I could read it and be totally happy and be like, that's the truth. That's not bias, that's just the truth. Right? And it was a real awakening to see how easy it is to be blinded by our own biases, to think the way that we see the world, that our own biases is just the truth. It's just the way it is. Makes it real easy to create an other, like this other person who's so different from who we are. Creating a world that works for everyone. Gosh, how would we do that? Because as soon as you say creating a world that works for everyone, I think there's a little subline there. You guys probably didn't hear the subline. Creating a world for everyone who thinks like I do. A world that works for everyone who thinks like I do. A world that works for everyone who agrees with me, or at least who doesn't have any really radical different beliefs than I have. It's a big vision we've signed up for, creating a world that works for everyone. I mean, would that be a world that works for those that were holding their demonstration in Charlottesville? Wow. That's hard, right? That's hard. Like a world but what makes it hard, I think, is that we create an other. Like they're very different than we are. They're very different than we are. Aren't they? Wow, they're really different than us. They're nothing like us, right? Racist beliefs, they're spouting off hatred. Very different from us, right? Or are they? I had another really profound experience. I went and I supported a spiritual workshop in a prison. And it was a beautiful, divine order of things that unfolded there, because here, most of the people who were staffing this were African American or people of color. And we went into this prison, and here's this man who's an inmate who had never really met a black person ever before. Their whole family was in the Ku Klux Klan and had all kinds of just hatred in their heart. And all kinds of stories, because they had never actually met a black person. So they had all kinds of stories about who black people are that the person had heard from family and all the people they had been around all their lives. And to cut to the chase and make the story a little shorter, this person was in absolute tears by the end of the workshop, because the irony of all these years of hatred toward a group of people that he had never even had a personal experience with, and that these people brought so much love to him. This group brought more love. He experienced more love that weekend than he experienced in his entire life. And it came from the group of people he had spent his entire life hating. you see a person like that get healed and transformed and shift. And it's real confirmation of what we already know. Because deep down we know, like we teach oneness, deep down we know we're all essentially the same. But we create others because the stories are so good. The stories are so good, it's like, oh yeah, that's an exception, that there's a quirk in the fabric of the universe, and this person is an exception to that thing we call oneness. This person is an exception to that thing we call an infinite wholeness that embraces all seeming opposites. The healing of our planet, the transforming of our planet, the creating of a world that works for everyone is how can we see through all these stories, even in those most difficult of circumstances? How can we see through it? We can't get there to a world that works for everyone, to a world where we start to seem the seeming opposites, unless we can see the truth in these really difficult places. Otherwise, we just keep an other out there. It's not easy work. It's not easy work. I mean, when I read this, I grew up in a time in Philadelphia in the 60s and 70s where we integrated a neighborhood, my family. So I heard the N-word directed at me when I was 4 years old. So when I read about Charlottesville, my initial reaction was not what I am speaking to you here today. I am not trying to say this is easy. I am trying to say this is necessary. My initial reaction was all the triggers from that past growing up and hate. Oh my goodness, why? How could this still exist? Because there were thousands of people who were showing up to this. How could that be? And then I started to look past the story. And I started to look at what were people asking for. Like, don't push us out is what they were asking for. Don't push us out. Can't I relate to that? I can relate to that. Don't push us out. It was a bridge into the compassion toward people for whom it was very difficult, given the story, for me to have compassion for. That, when we say we're creating a world that works for everyone, that's the high calling we have chosen. And then it starts with the people in our own life. The people in our own life. We don't have to go all the way out there to Charlottesville. Who have we pushed out there as an other that we don't need to invite the person over for tea every day. We don't have to have them over to our house at all. I'm not inviting any of those folks from Charlottesville to have tea with me. But I'm embracing them in my heart, and I'm praying for them. And I'm refusing to see them as an other. I'm having compassion. We know that everything starts in consciousness. We know that all change begins in consciousness. We could be as nice as we want to another person, but if we're holding animosity in our heart and judgment, what good is that? So our real work is internal. I want to close by bringing it right back around to my friend, Deirdre. Because guess who, several years later, guess who introduced this person here who now stands as a minister, a religious science minister, a minister in the science of mind teaching? Guess who introduced me to science of mind? Anyone know? Can anyone guess? Deirdre is the one who introduced me to science of mind. That 10 years after she introduced me to, I was a minister in this teaching. I took to it so amazingly. It was the most life-changing thing that's ever happened to me, and it came through the person that I had made the other. that couldn't possibly bring anything good into my life. Definitely not anything that was going to change my life, except for the worse. And Deidre is the person who introduced me to science of mind. Essentially because we showed up at a party of a common friend and began to have a conversation about why were we always fighting when we were on that board and all the misunderstandings we had. It turns out Deidre, who in my story was the toughest person I had ever met, went home and cried after every meeting. Exactly. That melted everything away. I'm like, what? I felt so much compassion for her. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like here, I'm like pushing hard against this person because they're tough as nails. And this person was going home and crying after every meeting. The invitation is to let go of any concept of an other whatsoever and to start to bring everyone into our hearts and bring love and compassion into every situation because we really don't know what the true story is. Let's turn within for prayer. And so I know right now that all of life is one. There is one infinite wholeness that embraces all seeming opposites. This is the truth of each one of us, that in our highest nature, we have the capacity to embrace all seeming opposites. For in truth, we are one with all life and all beings. And so it is from this place of oneness that I speak this word right now, and I know that right here and right now, we are dissolving every sense of otherness. We are fully aware of our oneness with all other beings, and we, right here, are the beacons of light that are right now healing, transforming, and uplifting our planet. We are the examples of what it is to truly practice unconditional love. And so I know right now that for each one of us, our relationships are uplifted, our relationships are healed, that we fully have the capacity to bring every person into our hearts and fully embrace them for who they are, whether at a distance or whether at close range, whether they're still on this physical plane or whether they've passed on, that we still have the capacity to bring them into our hearts and to bring the healing that heals the world of all sense of separation. And so I know right now that all is well and all is perfect with me, with mine, with each one here, and with each one that concerns each one here. Love is the answer, and love is available abundantly right where we are. I give thanks for this truth and this awareness and for all the good that is right now coming forth from this word, and I release it to that immutable law that only knows to say yes, and therefore I know it is done as I have declared. I let it be. I invite each one to join with me in grounding and accepting this with the words. And so it is. Amen. All I'll say about the workshop, thank you for being here. All I'll say about the workshop is that's where we get to do the practical, deeper work that we were just talking about here today. So if you're up for doing that work, come to the workshop. It won't be work. Everything I do, I like to have fun. So it won't be true work, but it will be the practice that takes us that next step into breaking through to a true sense of oneness with all other beings. Blessings. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. And as we live from our hearts and love from our souls, this is the time that we get to share our gifts and our tithes and our offerings. This is the time that we get to say yes to supporting this amazing community financially. And as you put things in the offering basket, it can be money we want, and love and joy and all of that you wish for us. So let's say our offering affirmation together. This perfect gift is spirit in form, circulating and blessing all it touches. Freely I give, and joyously I receive, and so it is.
God is my
Source. God gives us everything we need. We are blessed. All that is in this basket is blessed. All that is in our lives, absolutely blessed. And we are grateful. And so it is. I want to welcome you if you're here for the first time. We are just delighted that you're here. We have welcome packets in the lobby. Feel free to grab one of those, some information about our center, and a Science of Mind magazine, because it's a great way to keep ourselves inspired. And let's see, do we have any kids? Yeah, I thought so. Not yet. Soon. Keep. do, 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 do. do, do, do. Well, while we're waiting for the kids, I'll let you know a couple of important things. There's coffee and tea in the celebration hall afterwards, and some snacks. Oh, here they are. Here they are. You're the only kid?
Keith is stuck building. He's not being disturbed today, so I'm sorry. We did make dream boxes because, through hard times, we always got a dream. And so we're going to put his dreams are this car and his house are things he told me at 3 years old. So, just stay positive and get through everything and have a good day.
Thank you. And once again, next week, kids party. So in addition to inviting you to stay for celebration in the celebration hall, coffee and tea, snacks, of course, 12 o'clock, less than an hour, right here, Gregory's workshop. And at the end of our service, we honor prayer because it's so, so important to us. And so our practitioners will be in front, and you can come and ask them for a prayer. Just let them know what you want. We call it our 2-minute miracles. And it's an amazing way to jumpstart your week. So I invite you to do that or fill out a prayer request at the podium in the hallway. And one of the practitioners or I will pray on it all week long. So at this time, let's stand and do our benediction. Grab hands if you want to.